gonna go ahead and start this off by showing you guys my bone collection. The jaw bones on the bottom right and the small bone fragments were gifted to me by my good friend Bailey. Shoutouts to Bailey. And the skull and the vertebrae were found by my dog Doom in the woods during a hike a couple years ago. This baby buck skull was completely whole whenever we found it in the woods, but my dog who found it found found it again in the house and bit off the antler, and the part of the jaw actually just snapped off in storage, so that's my fault. To clean and disinfect the bones, I'm just boiling them here in a large pot of water. It's a pot that I bought specifically for cleaning bones, so don't worry, I'm not using it for anything else. So I boiled my bones for about 2 hours. I didn't think I need to go any longer because I really didn't have any meat on these. There was just a few pieces on the skull and the jaw bones that I needed to scrub off with steel wool scrubby. But other than that, honestly, I didn't have, there wasn't that much to clean off other than like dirt and just like a few gross bits that I wanted to pick out, which is what I'm doing in this clip here. Regardless of that, though, you do still want to boil your bones or peroxide them or anything that's going to disinfect them, because even if they don't have a lot of meat on them, they still came from a dead animal. They still came from the outdoors. You don't know what's all lingering on them. So just boil them. Definitely boil them. I know some people don't like boiling them, so I think peroxiding them is an option. I wouldn't recommend bleaching them because that will make your bones super brittle. I was having trouble cleaning out the dirt that was in all the nooks and crannies, so I just went and got a toothbrush that I've never used and won't ever use for anything else out of my storage in the basement, and just going into those little tunnels and nooks and crannies that are in a skull and just getting all the dirt out of them. And this is a soft bristle brush, so it wasn't doing much more than just dislodging dirt. I would say find like a tougher brush if you really want to get in there and like really scrub something down and like remove any gross bits in there. I literally just wanted to remove dirt with this, so I didn't need anything much more heavy duty than that. Here I am being a dumb bitch thinking that pouring peroxide on the skull is going to do anything. If you want to peroxide your bones as an extra disinfectant or as a lightener, you want it to soak in there. This isn't doing anything. I'm a dumb bitch. Don't do this. Moving on to the jawbone, I just wanted to show you guys. I don't know how well you can see it because I'm using my front-facing camera. It's not the best quality. There are just some gross bits on here that I wouldn't have really thought anything of had I not went ahead and watched some YouTube tutorials prior to doing this. So I'm happy that I did that. Definitely do your research if you have bones and you don't know what the hell you're doing, because that's me. I don't know what I'm doing, but here I am doing it. Thanks, YouTube. My phone had died as I started cleaning this jawbone, but same thing as the skull. I'm just going in, alternating between the toothbrush and the steel scrubby and just scrubbing it down. There were some gross pieces of meat like left on this, and in between the teeth here you can see me going in with just a wood skewer that I have and just going and there is some gross stuff in between those teeth, so you definitely want to get in there. I've seen somebody in a tutorial use a dull knife to dislodge any meat that was stuck in the teeth, but this works just fine. Eventually I had to switch to another one because the wood started fraying and the tip started coming off, so it wasn't doing much for me. But yep, here I am just kind of digging into the teeth gently again because I didn't want to pull any of these out. Teeth can be pretty sensitive on a bone, especially if it's just been sitting dormant for a while. I didn't want to pull any of the teeth out because it's pretty cool that they're all still in there. Once I had cleared any meat and muscle remnants off of the jawbone, I went ahead and moved on to the smaller bones. So here I have one of the vertebrae from the baby buck. Honestly, I don't know that these even needed a scrub. There wasn't even any dirt on them. I think I was more so scrubbing, seeing if I don't know, if there was anything that would come off. But honestly, nothing really did. I think the boiling was enough for that. But don't take my word for it, because again, this is my first time doing anything like this. I'm not a pro, so definitely take anything I'm saying in this video with a grain of salt. That being said, I do still think it's a good idea to scrub everything down that you're boiling. In this clip, I'm showing you guys, I scrubbed a little too hard. Really be careful with these smaller bones. And also, I forgot to mention, if you have very, very small, delicate bones, like a bird skeleton or any like small rodent, I don't recommend boiling for this. I do recommend insects or peroxide for small bones because they're way too delicate. Some people don't even like boiling larger bones because it does make them rather brittle. So just like I said, be forceful but gentle when trying to dislodge any dirt from these things because you'll end up with some like fragmented bones and that's no fun. I was having trouble reaching the smaller bones in the bottom of the pot after I had gotten the larger one. So I just went ahead and dumped out the pot of water into my sink. Be careful when you're doing this, like don't burn your hands. Don't have like your normal food utensils or whatever in the sink. Like make sure you don't have any dishes in the sink because this is some really nasty water. And again, you can see how dirty the water is, so definitely don't skip boiling them or whatever method of disinfecting you want to use. Even if they look clean, they're not fully clean. Definitely go ahead and disinfect those bad boys. At this point, I had started applying just my usual dish soap to the steel wool scrubby, and that was working wonders to get dirt out of the teeth and the jawbones. I don't know if soap has like a negative effect on cleaning bones, but it's soap, so and it's a really natural soap that I use, so I figured it would be more helpful than harmful. So I went ahead and did that, and it was just such a good combo for getting all the dirt. Well, I wouldn't say all of the dirt, but getting for a lot of the dirt and just dark spots that are in the teeth. It really cleaned that up. So if you feel like doing that, go for it. It was very helpful to me. I repeated that same process of scrubbing with soap for the rest of the bones that I had, and here is where I have them drying. If you're like me and you have dogs and cats, definitely put these up somewhere high to dry because they're animals. They want to play with bones. It's just natural. You can't blame them if they go after them. So if you don't want to, have to pull some bones away from your dog or your cat, just put them up somewhere high. I started the whole cleaning process of the bones rather late in my day, so it was already nighttime. Like it was late by the time I was at this point. So they're gonna go ahead and dry overnight, but pat them down with your towel before you just leave them to rest overnight because they hold on to water in this like really weird way. So just try to make sure they're as dry as you can get them before you leave them to rest. Here I'm just showing you guys how I took care of my hands after all the bones were set up to dry and I had gone through and like thoroughly disinfected all of like my kitchen surfaces and my sink. Yes, disinfect your sink. But it's literally just a really simple hand scrub of coconut oil and brown sugar, and I'm just going ahead and exfoliating my hands with that because they were so dry, like to the point where they hurt after doing this because I was working with hot water, had washed my hands probably 20 times because I had to keep stopping and starting recording and touching my phone and had a bunch of gross shit on my hands. So definitely wash your hands, disinfect everything in your kitchen, but here's an extra little thing you can do to get your soft skin on your hands back if you care. Look at that, beautiful, gorgeous, lovely, soft, smooth finger guns, yes. Okay, day 2, bones are dry, time for the fun stuff. Before we move on to that, though, I did just want to point out how I had my jawbones drying. I had them face down and propped like upside down basically and propped up for a reason because they have like these little canals going throughout it that like a ligament would usually be going through, and also all the cavities in the teeth can store water in there, so I did not want any water getting stuck in there overnight and getting all gross and filled with bacteria because that would have just destroyed the purpose of scrubbing them down and disinfecting them. So I'm just gonna speed up these clips of me talking and do a voiceover because I ramble so much when I'm recording myself. I just get weirdly nervous and I'm usually stoned and I just repeat myself a million times. So in this clip, I'm just saying that I'm gonna be crystallizing these bones, hence the reason you're watching this video, and hence the title. And I'm just explaining that the inspiration behind this for me is Tyler Thrasher. He's an incredible science artist. And in my eyes, he's the OG of the crystal bones, and I really admire his work. So I'll put a link to his work below because he's definitely the inspiration for crystallized bones and insects. And in my eyes, I'm sure he's not the first person to do it. But yep, shout outs to him. Look at my cute cat. So cute. So curious. In this bit here, I'm just explaining that I'm starting off the crystallizing process with the imperfect bones because I didn't want to mess up any of the larger bones. Like, I don't have another baby buck skull lying around to use, and skulls can get expensive from oddity shops, understandably so, but I just wanted to go ahead and start with the things that, not to say I care less about them, but, like, they're already broken. If I messed them up, it wouldn't be as big of a deal as if I had messed up the skull. Here I'm just showing you guys what I'll be using to do this, which is a bucket. I'm just using my regular mop bucket. You can, if you have a spare bucket, that'd be best. A deeper bucket might be better for the larger bones, but for this part, this bucket works just fine. And then I'm using fishing line. It works great. You could probably use like any thin string, but fishing wire is great to use. And then just wooden dowels that will be, more than wide enough to rest on the outside of your bucket. So go ahead and start attaching your bones to your wooden dowels using the fishing line. Just by you want to make a knot around the bone, and with fishing line, it's a really it's like a very slippery string. So you want to I think I probably made about 4 knots, nothing fancy. If you're gifted in the art of knot tying, I'm sure you could, pop out those Boy Scout skills right there and, do some fancy knot. But for me, I just tied like 3 or 4 standard knots, and that was enough for it to, not slip out of the knot, and because it will come undone if you don't tie it enough. So, yep, and then I just cut off the excess string, and there it is. Hanging, having a good time. In this round of crystallizing, I'm also including the part of Jawbone that broke off from the baby buck skull. So here I'm just finding like a discrete place to string the fishing line through, which happened to be this little like canal through the bone that went in one way, string comes out the other, just funneled it through, and I just ended up tying a knot there, as you can see here. I try to keep my knots like away from the bone. It was a little too difficult to tie like that. I just wanted it to not get stuck to the bone once it crystallized, but you'll see later it's not a big deal. It's easy enough to remove if it does crystallize to the bone. But yeah, so don't worry too much about that because I don't think I ended up being able to do it anyways. I think most of my knots did end up being closer to the bone just because it was just easier to tie that way. Here I'm just explaining that I had to actually go back and retie this one because I had made the length way too long. Like there was just way too much excess string, and the piece of bone was at the bottom of the bucket, which again you don't want because it will be crystallized to the bottom of the bucket, and that's no fun. Here's my little man Everest checking out what the hell I'm doing. I'm very surprised at how good he was being because he was just watching me the whole time and not messing with anything, which is not his usual MO. And here are all the bones once they're strung up. Again, you do want to have some space between where they're hanging from and the bottom of the bucket. Here I'm just showing you guys that how I tied this one. It is heavier than all the other bones I have here, so I tied it like twice and it slipped out of its knot. So just for any heavier bones that you're doing this with, make sure you're tying them well, especially as I said before, fishing line is so slippery. It can be really weak, but if you tie it correctly, you shouldn't have any problems. Just be patient and be thorough. So now it's time for the fun stuff. You're going to be crystallizing these using borax powder. It's just a regular old detergent powder that you can get from probably your local grocery store. I got mine at Walmart. They have them at the dollar stores. Yeah, just maybe call a couple places and see if they have it, because it sucks wasting time going to a store to not find something that you need. Now you want to go ahead and see how much water it's going to take to cover your bones in the bucket. You want your bones fully submerged in water. Otherwise, it's, unless you're doing like that for stylistic purposes, you're not going to crystallize the whole bone. So if you want the whole bone crystallized, get them covered in water. In this bit here, I'm just explaining that I thought you needed boiling water. You actually don't. You just want your water to be like hot enough that it's simmering to help break down the borax and help dissolve it. I'm also explaining that I wanted to do a 1/2-to-1 ratio of borax to water, because I kind of wanted to go for smaller crystals, but yeah, you'll see here I really fucked that one up. Okay, so I start measuring out my borax powder. I'm using the 2-cup line on my measuring cup. Use whatever unit is comfortable with you. I had 24 cups of water in my bucket to cover my bones, so I'm going for half of that, right? Careful when you're pouring borax, because it will get in your mouth. Like, the dust will just rise up and it tastes really nasty. Try not to breathe it in too much because it is a chemical. But going back to what I was saying, so I'm going for 12 cups of borax powder for a 1/2-to-1 ratio with water. But I lost track at some point while I'm recording this. And basically, I just messed up the math and end up adding way too much borax powder. And you can see in this very unfortunate clip, this is when I'm realizing that I was using way too much. I'm a little bit of an idiot. So I've been counting these as 1 cup. I forgot to multiply because it's 2 cups. So how many did I put in? I put in 8. Okay, so I guess I'm not going for a 1/2-to-1 ratio. I'm going to be closer to a 1-to-1 ratio, because I fucked that up. So yeah, a mess. Yeah, so here I am just explaining a little bit more about how I can't count. Yeah, so I still had about roughly around a 1-to-1 ratio, and it was still way too much borax. I should have followed the advice of this one girl whose tutorial I watched for crystal bones. She just eyeballed how much powder she needed, so she starts pouring in the powder and stirring it, and then once she sees or feels that the borax powder is no longer dissolving, that's how she knows she has enough. Definitely take that advice. I'm going to link that video below, because it's a really good tutorial, and that's what I used in addition to a couple other videos. So definitely do it that way, because I had so much borax powder left. It was ridiculous. So this next part is not necessary, but if you do want to make the bones and the crystals a little bit prettier, you can dye them with just regular food dye. Get it from the grocery store, like the baking section. And now I'm going for a pinkish purple color, so I just pulled out the purple and the magenta dyes from this, and this coloring will fade over time, and also you're diluting it with a bunch of water. So you want to, you can put in a lot. I think I ended up putting in a roughly 20 drops of purple and pink. And then just go ahead and stir that in. So now you want to go ahead and get ready to transfer the water from the pot back into the bucket that you had the bones in. Go ahead and get a towel that, you know, you don't mind if it gets dirty. This is a towel I just use for my dog's muddy paws when they come in from the yard or being at the park. So go ahead and put a towel down, put your bucket over that, get your cat out of the way. And then just take your pot off the stove, you know, use oven mitts if it's still hot, which it should still be hot, so definitely use oven mitts, and then just transfer that water to a bucket. It's a little hard to see because of the reflecting light, but I'm just showing you all of the borax that was left in the bottom of the pot. I started getting nervous that none of the borax had dissolved into the water, so I ended up just putting some of this, not all of it, into the bucket that the bones would be soaking in and stirring it together, even though I knew it wasn't going to dissolve. Probably didn't need to do that, just, I don't know. I was psyching myself out while I was doing this. And here I am just getting my dowels and my bones that are tied to the dowels from before and placing them gently into my bucket. And now we wait. I've seen anywhere from 4 to 12 hours. I think I let mine sit for about 6 hours. And here I am pulling them up. Yeah, I think it was about 6 or 5.5 hours that I let mine sit. And it was more than enough for me. Like, I could have gone longer and they would have like really started clustering up, but I wanted mine to look like this. I wanted the smaller crystals. I was very happy with how this looks. You can check on them every now and then. I kept getting scared I was going to mess them up if I kept checking on them, but I wanted to see what point they were at. So if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't have, you know, seen them. But also if you do want to just, you know, give yourself the element of surprise, you could just let them sit there for hours on hours on hours and then just be pleasantly surprised in the end. In this clip, I'm just doing a very bad job of showing you that I'm just cutting the fishing line off of the dowel and cutting it as close as I can to the bones. I did run into like a slight problem here. I don't know that I'd really call it a problem, but like there was just little parts where the strings had crystallized as I had, you know, had assumed they would, but it's easy enough to like pull the crystals away. Like the crystals are really soft and malleable, so be gentle while you're doing this too, because the crystals are definitely very fragile. But yeah, just go in with your scissors and cut the string as close as you can to the bone. You might still see a little bit sticking out, and what I did like the next morning, I just went back in because it was bothering me, and I literally just pulled them with my fingers and they came out just fine. So I didn't give these two vertebrae enough space between each other on the dowel, so they ended up fusing together while like taking a little crystal bath. But it, as you see, it was just easy enough for me to pull them apart gently. So once those are all cut off from the dowels, you can go ahead and start drying them. I would have dried them with the towel that I have there, but as I said, I use it for my dogs, and it's just covered in hair. So I was getting hair on the crystals as I was drying them, and I did not want that. Look at how sweet my Doom Boy is. He's just sitting there sniffing them, being so good, not even trying to take them away. And he really could if he wanted to, but he doesn't. You know why? Because he's a good boy. Oh, what a good boy. So yeah, just gently pat them. You don't want to go too hard because these crystals are fragile. They will break off if you go too hard on them. So just be gentle while doing this. And finally, you are at your last step. Go ahead and get some clear sealer and finish. Honestly, doesn't matter what kind. This was just something that was given to me by my boyfriend's mom to seal some wood that we have. Go ahead and shake that and make sure you do shake it well. And then you can just start spraying. You want to have them fully covered. You don't want it like necessarily saturated, like you don't want it dripping wet in sealer, but do make sure that you're being thorough. Here you see me using my fingers. Don't do that. It did make my life easier, but I really should have been wearing gloves, so don't be like me. Use protection, always. Sealer does dry very fast, but just to be safe, I did leave them to dry fully overnight. And here are the finished products the next morning, and that's it. You have crystal bones. I hope this was helpful, and I'm sorry it's so long. I tried to make it as quick to the point as possible while not leaving anything out. So hope this was helpful to you guys. Let me know if you make some. I guess I'm supposed to tell you to like, comment, and subscribe, but you know, it's a free country, as they would say, so do what you want. Probably won't be uploading that often, but hey, maybe I'll do more of these if you guys want me to. I guess that would be cool. Alright, thanks so much for watching.